Hi there, and good evening. Welcome to the Free Talk. I'm Dr. JOYLYN Maniaci, and this is my offering, How to Save a Failing Marriage Fast. 3 simple yet powerful ways to change your communication so you can stop hurting, start laughing, and stay together. Oops, I always do that there. So what we're going to learn today, the simple formula to get your partner to listen to you. The fastest way to change the direction of your love life without having to start over. And the ultimate attention-getting, trust-building tool that changed the story's ending without ending the relationship, because that's the whole point. We're trying to save the marriage. And what I'm offering you tonight are some of the tools that I teach my clients in the relationship remodeling program, which we'll talk a little bit about at the end. But this isn't a sales talk, so we'll just hold it to a little bit at the end. But who is this lovely face before you? I'm Dr. JOYLYN Maniaci. It's good to meet you. I'm a doctor of naturopathic medicine and a certified yoga life coach. And let me tell you that as a doctor, relationships are such a big part of health. They can very profoundly impact, positively or negatively, emotional and physical well-being, but they're not really addressed. They're not asked about, they're not talked about in the healthcare setting. So both a cause and a symptom of some health problems is relationship distress. And so I think it's an important part of wellness, and it's something that I enjoy talking about, that people feel comfortable talking to me about. And so it just seemed to be a good fit as far as a way of me bringing health and happiness to people and the planet. I'm also a creatrix. I'm the director of the Happiness Clinic. That's my coaching practice. I'm a relationship alchemist. I specialize in relationship dynamics and communication. And let me tell you, the relationship dynamics also includes the relationship you have with yourself. And by changing the way that you relate to yourself, you can alchemize your entire life, meaning you can turn it from shit to gold. You know, alchemy was lead to gold, but basically we have a tendency of performing and tolerating some really unsavory situations, unpleasant thoughts, a kind of crummy emotional climate. And a lot of that's just because of how we relate to ourselves. And part of what we're going to be talking about tonight is that, because relationship dynamics, communication, insecurity, confidence, those kind of things, they have a reciprocal relationship with communication. And so we are often practicing repeating subtle messages to ourselves about who we are, what we're worthy of, what we deserve, what we can handle, what we can tolerate, and what we can actually do. And so when we kind of tap into that and change that, our whole lives can change. I'm also a happiness facilitator in that I make relationships and happiness easier to come by. Sometimes if you've been depressed, and if you've been depressed for a while, maybe because of, or just the relationship problems are stemming from that it seems that that's just who you are now, or that's how it's just going to be, and you have to deal with it, you know, find a way to cope with it. And I totally disagree. Sometimes it is just a tiny little flip that makes a huge difference. And sometimes just having an encourager to say, hey, you can do this. But relationship sustainability, so again, we're going to talk about this. It's not about just getting it to hang on. We're not going to have you be walking on eggshells and this fragile ecosystem for the rest of your life, because that's not fun. But actually a healthy, sturdy relationship that you can count on and have it be part of your emotional health and physical well-being. And I am a person. I am a woman, and I've been in a lot of relationships. I understand firsthand the agony, the heartbreak, even the bereavement, almost like a grieving process for a relationship that's going down the tubes and seeing like no matter what I did, it wasn't turning around. And I actually then learned how. And it wasn't as hard as I thought, mostly because we're actually with people who want to be with us as well. And so generally, once we start to make a move and see ourselves as powerful agents of change and also see that we are actually contributing to the problem. It's not all coming from outside. And we take steps to do that, things can actually turn around really quickly. And again, it's about healing. It's about making yourself and the relationship better and stronger so that it isn't this fragile system that you have to worry about falling apart any minute, because that is not a comfortable place to live, not healthy. So I invite you now. You can also join me and be part of the group that I host on Facebook, Relationship Real Talk with Dr. JOYLYN, myself. And I say Relationship Real Talk because this isn't about gossip. This isn't about trendy little memes. It's not just about breaking up and finding somebody new. It's about being with people who are actually kind of working with some of the same ideas, seeing that they're coming in with some of similar baggage, you know, similar stories, and having a conversation around that that's actually empowering and liberating. So, and sometimes strong talk of just talking about, here's what the hell we've been doing that's not working, you know, like let's call a spade, and then let's not do that anymore. And so we can change the world with our conversation if we're willing to be vulnerable and participate in conversations that matter. And this is one of the ways that I would like to be there and support world change and actually helping your relationship in that way. So it's a closed Facebook group. I'm actually accepting invitations through the end of September, but at the end of September, it's going to be closed and only people who are in the 90-day relationship remodel program will be able to participate. So get in while you can, because there is a weekly group call that I host every Wednesday at noon where you can put in your questions and we can have a conversation about whatever is coming up for you and other members of the group. So it's sort of an added bonus, like a free coach, you know, in your corner just by being part of that group. So throughout this presentation, if you have a question, please ask. It's always, that's the easiest, fastest way to get information, is to ask a question. So if anything is confusing, definitely don't hold back. So the full disclosure here is that I love what I do and I'm good at it. I have been through a lot of hell that I've put myself through, so there's really no judgment here. We all do some silly things, some torturous things, some ugly things, and have been through some hard things. And having walked through the woods, it's nice to know that somebody can help get you out of there as well. And I would love to be able to help you in your relationship, because I would like more laughter on the planet. Laughter is a very nurturing energy for our planet and a very healing energy for the planet, for our bodies, for our families. And I would like to be part of delivering that and helping you have more of that. And the reason that I'm doing the seminar is so you can meet me, because this is a slightly uncomfortable situation that you might find yourself in about having a marriage that is on the rocks, a relationship that you're not sure if you should stay or if you should go or how to turn it around, even if you'd like to. And I know I have the tools and the resources. I enjoy doing this work, but you want to make sure that I'm a good fit, that you can relate to me in some ways, that you find that I'm somebody that I can talk to. So this is an opportunity I'm giving you, because I understand it's a really tough choice to make when you finally say, yeah, I'm going to invest in my marriage. And so to also kind of facilitate that process and make it a little bit easier to choose, I always offer a free consultation, so that if you're considering working with me, you get we'll set aside 15 minutes to just talk about what is going on for you. It's not a sales pitch. It's not any kind of guilt trip. It's nothing like that. It's just to clarify what's going on for you and what you'd like to change, and making sure that me, my services, and my personality are a good fit for you, and that we'll work well together to make sure that you're getting, so that you'll have success, you know? So if you are interested in booking a free initial consultation, just ping me at the end of the seminar and we can set that up for you. Also, I'm not making this up. What I'm talking to you about right now today is what I teach my clients in every session. It's part of what I did in my relationship to turn it around. And it's actually incredibly simple, and you know a lot of it. And it'll work if you work it. And sometimes that one of the gifts that I have is simplifying, assimilating, synthesizing, and simplifying information, and making it easier to hear and for you to actually take and be able to apply in your life. And if, you know, what we had been taught and been modeled and what we were doing right now was working, we wouldn't be here. So it really is time for a change, and this is part of what you can do to turn your situation around. So now we're going to dive into the meat and potatoes, like how to save a failing marriage fast. 3 simple, powerful ways to change your communication so you can stop hurting, start laughing, and stay together. And again, we're going to learn the simple formula to get your partner to listen to you, the fastest way to change the direction of your love life without starting over, and how to get his attention, build the trust, and change the dynamic, change how the story's ending without ending the relationship. That's what we're going to do. So let's get started. So the simple formula to get your partner to listen to you is what I call sweeten the tart. So a lot of what I'm going to be talking about is the importance of communication. My premise is that insecurity and miscommunication are at the core of all relationship struggles. They actually create sort of a feedback loop, and they have a reciprocal relationship, so one kind of feeds into the other. So poor communication and poor messaging can lean more into insecurity. And if you're insecure, you tend to not effectively communicate what it really is that kind of makes your communication ineffective, and then that makes you feel more insecure. They kind of loop on each other. We've been taught so much poor and ineffective communication. It's actually unbelievable that a lot of us have made it this far. There's a lot of poor modeling going out there, and that includes like your families, your aunts, your cousins, your sisters, and definitely in the media as far as how women communicate with men, what is normal between men and women, what is love, what is marriage. These things are all things that get repeated and reiterated, almost like programmed into our mind, and it's not actually effective or what will build a healthy relationship dynamic. And again, some communication patterns actually make connection impossible or very unlikely, including a common female pattern that will actually, we've seen it, I'm pretty sure we've all done it, I know I did, decrease cooperation and actually increase a sense of isolation in a relationship. And the importance of communication, miscommunication is expensive. The average divorce in the United States right now is $15,000. And that's average, meaning that includes some uncontested divorces. And we're talking a minimum of 6 weeks up to a year to even have an uncontested divorce complete. Like, it's very expensive time-wise as well. So improving communication can actually make, if you choose to get a divorce, less expensive emotionally and financially, and best case scenario, actually turn things around and allow you guys to have a happy marriage. Okay, here's my friend Stimpy dog's gonna get on my lap. Okay, this is my little friend Stimpy dog. He's a good helper, but I think he's just gonna hang out on my lap. So we're talking about how to get your partner to listen to you. And when you don't feel listened to, you feel alone in the relationship. And it feels like you have to fight for anything and everything that you ask for. There's more conflict, there's more argument, sometimes even then avoidance of a partner, sometimes stonewalling, just the silent treatment, or sometimes just feeling like you need to maintain a safe distance. And you begin to look for support outside of your relationship. On the flip side, when you do feel listened to, you feel valued and understood. You are confident in your ability to get what you'd like. You know, you ask for something, it kind of shows up. It happens. You enjoy a cooperative partnership and feel engaged and connected with your partner. You feel secure in your relationship and your ability to get support from your partner. And then you and your partner look to each other and look inward towards the relationship as a means of support. And this is all the benefits of just when you feel listened to. This is what naturally happens. Now, the problem is a lot of people are struggling with this. We wouldn't be here because if this wasn't a problem. A lot of us are not feeling listened to. And I don't know that I really need to tell you how painful it is to not feel listened to. It really makes us question our value, our worthiness as a person, our curiosity and doubt of if our partner even cares about us or loves us, even if they say that they do. That's how powerful listening is. And so part of the reason that there is such a struggle and an impasse and so many people feeling hurt and unlistened to is because we've had so many poor communications modeled. And that includes, talking over your own feelings, masking and denying what's coming up for you. Like, no, it's fine. I'm okay. It's no big deal. I'm over it. And honestly, that's dishonest and dishonoring of ourselves. And even though it seems harmless and maybe you're just trying to get through the day, when we do that over and over and over, we actually distance ourselves from ourselves, make more distance between ourselves and who we're communicating to as the other person. There's also hinting, insinuating, assuming that someone knows without actually directly or clearly stating something. That's very common. Sarcasm, which a lot of people tend to really enjoy and think that is very fine, can actually create a lot of antagonism and separation between people. It's a defense mechanism, kind of masking what's really going on inside. There's also some distance. My mom it would drive my sister and I crazy. Would someone like to set the table? And we would look around and look for that someone, because the someone was not me, nor was it her. And it was a frustrating pattern to where it was like, Mom, I wish you would just ask us to do this. We know it doesn't take very long, and we will deliver it if you ask it. But the way that it was so roundabout and indirect actually was more irritating and frustrating to me. And asking for someone, I would look for them because it wasn't me. And so there are ways sometimes that we just don't really ask for what we'd like. So it's very unclear or even irritating how we're communicating with people. And we repeat these ineffective, sometimes hurtful patterns, hurtful a lot of times to us when we're just saying things are fine when they're not really fine inside. And they solidify into habits. Another one of these struggles is opening and leading with feelings, because hurt and insecurity generally talk the loudest. They're obnoxious and loud. And what this is what John Gottman at the Love Lab in UW in Seattle calls harsh startup. And that's basically putting an angry tone, a very large obstacle or hurdle in the front, as far as obviously angry, tone of voice, a lot of extra words. You can tell just really kind of pushy feelings at the beginning. So both the person requesting and the person listening to have like this giant hurdle to get over before they even get to the request. And for a lot of people who have been communicating this way, especially this is slightly more female common, is they just stop listening. Men just stop listening because all they hear is negative, you're in trouble, and they just stop there. So the request is never even processed in their brain. And that's only because we led with insecurity and hurt, not because what we were actually asking for wasn't okay or valid, or our partner doesn't want to be there for us. It's just our actual ineffective communication that we've been practicing. Another reason people are struggling is they're actually unwilling to do something different. It would be admitting that something isn't working, that they are part of the problem, and actually putting effort into changing something. And some people are just unwilling to do it at this point. I talked a little bit about that in that power hour, I was talking about with the relationship real talk group. And so there's a lot there that can, negatively impact our relationships. And sometimes we're struggling because we just don't know what else to do. This is our habit. This is what we've been practicing. This is what we've been doing. Even sometimes when we think we're trying something different, we're kind of doing the same thing. And this is what we've seen modeled. And so we kind of just don't know what else to do. So here's my offering, is a simple formula to get your partner to listen to that I call sweeten the tart. So sweeten the tart is changing the tone of the conversation, simplifying the communication, decreasing resistance and defensiveness, and it's something that'll work, so you'll be encouraged to do it. So the simple formula is just ask for what you'd like. The formula is to call him by name, a nice name, make your request, and then you can add how it will contribute to you, and then stop. That is all the information that is required. So you can see right away, we are changing the tone by opening with a soft invitation, which is using the person's name or a name that is likely to elicit support. Lover, helper, friend, baby, whatever it is, a pet name. We tend to use, and when you say his name, say it in a nice tone of voice. We're changing the tone. So it's not like, asshole, jerk, hey, buddy, nothing harsh like that. We're actually opening, we're changing the tone. And so using his name humanizes him to you and to him. It's a very subtle subconscious shift, but a person's name is one of the sweetest sounds to their own ears. So that if you can get their attention by calling their name, you've already gotten the attention. That's like one part of the hurdle that's been kind of stopping the whole process. Then you simplify and make the request. This is not inserting any emotionality into it. It's keeping the emotional information, the emotional charge out of it. What the female pattern is that a lot of women tend to use is to either do harsh startup and also to build up a case for the request, to actually validate the request before making the request. As far as if you would like your husband to change the laundry and put it in the dryer, instead of just saying, hey, will you put the clothes in the dryer? There's this irritation of why haven't you already put the clothes in the dryer? That's the tone I'm leading with. That's a harsh startup. And then you'll be like, I have already done 3 loads of laundry, fed the kids, given the dog a bath, ran back and forth to soccer practice, and now I'm starting on dinner. Could you please put the clothes in the laundry? And there's underlying insecurity there that if you simply asked, your partner would come through. And also that maybe there's something wrong with you for needing help. A lot of women have been taught we're supposed to be able to do it all now. And if we don't, if we ask for help, that's showing some sort of weakness or lack in us. And both of those things aren't true. Most of us are with partners who would like to contribute. Now, historically and habitually, they might not, but that is in large part, not entirely, but in large part because our requests have been front-loaded with negative emotions. So if we can take that out, we have a better chance of them listening. And also, if we can just make the request simple and maybe just one thing at a time, and not because men are stupid, but they actually don't process auditorily as fast, generally, so that actually simplifying and breaking things down actually makes it easier for them to register what you've actually asked for. Now, because you're with a man and he wants to contribute to you, you can offer how it would contribute. In my example, I say, will you go to the store and get some butter? I forgot we were out and I needed to start dinner. I'm really hungry. He knows then that he can get dinner quicker and satisfy your hunger without getting his head bit off. That's, hey, awesome. I can contribute to her. And that's all the information that's required. You might have asked 84 times before. You might have done 99.99% of the process or work that needs to be done. You're only asking for something simple. It doesn't matter. Just leave the irritation out of it. And so that's going to decrease the defensiveness, and because there's no harsh feelings and no accusations in there. So that is the simple formula. It's really, really so simple. So the keys to success is to keep it simple. Call him or her a name that is likely to elicit cooperation. If you're out of creative ideas and you're just not feeling like giving them a pet name, just use their name and just use it in a nice tone of voice. That's the best place to start. Open then with a request. We're not leading with feelings. We're not leading with insecurities, with frustrations, nothing. Just ask for what you'd like. Leave the feelings, the rationale, the justification, any kind of need for fairness, anything, just leave it out. And then tell him or her how it will contribute to you and keep it positive. Now, when I say keep it positive, when you make a request, it needs to be something that can be fulfilled. A damaging language pattern that is common when requesting is asking somebody to not do something. And sometimes with kids, that's just all going to be can you just stop? Just stop. But when we're talking, to ask somebody to not do something sort of sets them up for failure, because then you will only be able to notice when they do something, because that's when the positive is there, when it's actually there, and that's what you've asked them to stop. So you say, could you not do this? Could you stop doing this? Could you be quiet? And then they want to contribute to you, but they can't let you know that they've contributed to you without then being tagged for failing. And so try to rephrase your request as something that they can do, that is actual positive, as far as art, like positive and negative space, like something that actually can be delivered or performed. So if you sweeten the tart, you can feel heard, you can feel appreciated, and you can be a team together. So one thing that came when I wrote a blog about this, and you can find that blog at drjoylynmariachi.com, and it was the simple formula that I used to get my partner to listen to me, is why, somebody on Facebook commented, why is it up to the woman to do it all the time? And there is no rule that a woman has to do this. There isn't any. What's happening, though, is women are being revealed and called to be the leaders that they are, and leaders of their own life and relationship. And so if you're going to be a leader, you take the first step, because that's part of leadership. And so it isn't up to you by any rule or definition. And there's no you should do this. But what there is you can do this. This is something you can try and you can practice and get good at, and be amazed at what happens when you actually do. Now, it might not be that the first time you do this, your husband turns on a dime and everything you've ever been asking for gets delivered. But I will tell you that once you actually try to do something different, your own confidence in yourself will get better, because you just know that you tried and did something different. That is confidence builder, and we'll be saying that over and over in this free talk. And things really will change when you do this. How do you know what to call him or her? I've spoken to that. Using their name is actually the best, easiest thing. If you have a pet name that you think will work, that will also do it. Lover is very effective, actually. It seems weird because nobody that I grew up with ever called anyone lover, but I had a coach that talked about that, and I actually started using it, and lovers really want to deliver for their lover. So calling them that might actually be more effective than you think. What's different about this is that it is so simple and elegant. It gets the attention of the subconscious, both yours and his, because anytime you interrupt a pattern, you will get your subconscious to pay attention. So that even if you're interrupting your own pattern, you're going to be like, oh, things are different. It'll feel weird at first, but that's actually a good sign that something's actually different, and then something different can show up. Because if you continue to do the same thing and communicate in the same way, things aren't just going to magically get better. If you want something different to show up, you're going to have to do something different. And what's different about this is it's simple and it's elegant. It's actually easy to start right away. And will this really work? It totally does. And I always talk about the story that I had when I had a typical office job, while I was building this business, and I'm getting ready for work and I'm curling my hair, and my husband works events. So he's kind of home and away, and he was home at this time, and he has a tendency to sleep very late when he's home, which for whatever reason, I just decided that irritated me. So that when I was getting ready for work, I really thought he should be up kind of with me and supporting me and helping me get out the door. And this particular morning, I didn't time everything so great, so it was coming down between the dog getting a walk or me getting coffee. And with that, there's a no contest. The dog's going to get a walk because he's going to insist on this, and I don't want to come home to an accident on the floor. So coffee wasn't really looking like it, but I'd really like some because it's just fun to have on the drive, a nice little creamy, warm beverage. And so I was getting irritated, and I've actually had that morning before and very irritatedly let my husband know how annoying it was that he was still in bed. But on this particular morning, I was like, I actually just don't want to go there. Maybe out of boredom almost, because I'd done that before. And so I just went into the bedroom and I laid on top of him and I gave him a kiss and I said, would you make me coffee before I go to work? And he turned over and he looked at me and he smiled and he said, I'd love to. And in less than 2 minutes, he was out of bed, dressed, and making coffee. And I had warm coffee and a loving kiss sending me out the door, all because I just chose to do it differently. Like, both our hearts were light. We felt closer, and we both were able to contribute because he liked being woken up with a kiss and his lover laying on top of him. Like, that was kind of a nice way to wake up. So it's actually a win-win. So it really does work. And because it works so well, I was like shocked. And it actually inspired me to keep doing it. And it really is amazing how much yard work and projects and things get done when I just say, hey, will you do this with me or for me? It would really help me out. And he's there because, you know, we chose them. They want to help us. You know, we just act like we have this antagonistic partner, but really it's been our ineffective communication that's gotten in the way. So that is the simple formula to get your partner to listen to you. And now we are going to, if anybody has any questions, feel free to like raise your hand or whatever, and I'll get to them. Otherwise, I just keep going forward, and I will continue to be mindful of my speed and tone. But the fastest way to change the direction of your love life without starting over, and that is using empowering language. So the real power of language is something that is largely ignored in our education. Nobody talks about this really, but language is actually a creative force, and we speak things into existence. Now, a lot of us know the Christian creation myth. I say creation myth, just, okay, bear with me, but of God speaking things into existence. He spoke it and it was there. And that's actually a large part of how things get created still by us. And you can even think of the word spelling. You're casting a spell and actually changing things. But how you do the creative thing and the creative power of language, that's easy to brush off and be like, oh, whatever. But you take something that is an intangible, energetic form, and through the power of your perception of an idea and you having a physical body, you are able to physicalize that idea into a sound wave. A sound wave is an actual physical thing. It hits things and makes sound. It hits your eardrum and creates a vibration that then changes and causes synapses to fire in your brain, and you perceive a sound. That's you doing that. That's a creative force, and it's very, very powerful, even though very, very underestimated. Language also has a reciprocal language with our thoughts, a very intimate tie with our subconscious. And how that is we repeat things over and over. We repeat thoughts. We give our thoughts words, we say them, and we repeat them so that they kind of get put into our subconscious programming. If you think about, like, repetition is a big part of brainwashing. So we actually brainwash ourselves by repeating the same story about who we are, what we're good at, what we're not good at, what we like, what we don't like, what we can do and what we can't do. And these become our programming and how we just start making automatic pilot decisions. And we do this to where we do it so often it becomes habit. And when it's habit, then it's running. It's always running in the background. And it's not until we actually question it that then it actually becomes something that we can change. But how that is basically our language. When we repeat something over and over, it actually fuels more of the same thoughts. So they kind of go in tandem. And we often use this very, very powerful force of language against ourselves by talking about what we don't like, what we don't want, what we don't have, and what we want to avoid. Like things in our past that didn't go well, and so we have to do everything in our power to stop them from happening again. And we'll give our power away with the words that we use. Want, need, wish. These things are seemingly innocuous words that we use very frequently. But when we actually say want, we're actually saying that we're lacking something. In old dictionaries before 1946, the word want was actually meaning to lack something. Now it says it's a desire for something, but the true meaning of it is actually just to say, I don't have this thing. So when we say, I want a relationship, you're saying, I don't have a relationship. And then if you're saying something that you need, you're actually saying, I am unable to survive without this thing. It is more important or as important as the rest of my life. That's how significant something's made when we say it's a need. And then when we talk about wishing, even though this seems like a positive element that people really talk about, it includes an element of doubt, of really not being sure if it's possible or if it will actually happen. And so when we're using these words, we're actually saying, I don't have this thing. This thing is so important, I can't live without it. If I don't get it, I'm going to die. And I wish this would happen, but I really don't know if it's actually possible. And that's with the words that we use, because the subconscious knows this. This is what the message we're telling ourselves. Another way is keeping things very unclear and nebulous references, as far as we talk a lot about more or better or less. And it's hard to know when you've actually succeeded or moved closer to your aim when the aim is so broad and vague and undefined. You know, especially in business courses, they'll say, I just want to make more money. Well, you could make $10 more and that's actually true, but that's not really going to make a huge change in your business. So you need to get clear on a dollar amount. And when it comes to relationship, you need to, I want to be better at communicating. What does that actually mean? The number of arguments is going to go down. We're going to start feeling closer. There's going to be more affectionate touch between us, like getting clearer on what it is instead of keeping everything distant and vague. That's actually a way that we use our language against us, or don't use the full power of language for us. And then feeling stuck and depressed about the relationship actually, like I said, becomes a habit that's created and reinforced through our repetition. The good news about this is we solidified it into habit, and we've got some brilliant minds and a heart that hurts and says, hey, some shit's got to change. We can actually break this pattern. We can break the spell. We can deprogram ourselves. We can change the habits so that we can use our language for ourselves and use it to make things better. So the opposite of empowering language is what I call defeating language. And so when we're using defeating language, there is a lack of novelty or fresh content. And basically, we're not saying anything new. We're not asking any questions. We're globalizing and overgeneralizing. So we're mostly just continuing to explain or describe our feelings or our problems. There's not really any question or invitation for new information. And then we tend to use always and never instead of actually more of an accurate way of looking at things. Again, the problem, issue, or past focus. We're talking a lot about what already happened, trying to figure it out, giving more description, more body to it, looking at it as a point of reference so we know what to avoid, and almost doing just the opposite of that, as if that is something very aware or brilliant to do. We talk about what we don't want and what we don't have. A lot of us have friendships that are based on a problem or problem solving. And that's actually a misuse of time and energy and language. Defeating language exacerbates insecurity. It actually makes it worse. And so in our creative power, if we continue to talk about problems, a lot of times those same sort of issues keep showing up. We talk about not having a relationship, so we continue to not have a relationship to talk about not having a relationship. That's not an accident. That's part of how we're creating things. And it feels very odd and unnatural to talk about things as if you already have them. But that's actually a lot of, manifestation, secret law of attraction kind of thing. There's elements of truth to that. You have to change your consciousness and how you talk about things, and as if you have them, as if they are already on the way. Otherwise, what you're doing is just repeating what's been true and making what has been true some more. And also there are ways, and we'll talk about it again, especially when you're talking about your partner, that there's a way that you're subtly telling yourself that you don't deserve much more than this. This is the best that you can do, or you are stupid to pick them in the first place, and kind of question your intelligence. And if you are the one who's not listening to you and your needs, like we talked about before, you're actually also telling yourself, your feelings, your experience actually isn't valid. Just deal with it, you know? So there's a lot of insecurity that is amplified, exacerbated, made worse by using defeating language. And defeating language will also breed antagonism, comparison, and competition with your partner. And as far as, let's see, comparison, a lot of times I'm getting with clients how they're comparing to like a normal standard, what's normal, or what, especially when we have to sometimes go into childhood of it wasn't as bad as anyone else's, as if you really know anyone else's childhood stories. So a lot of times there's a comparison as to what you think you should have had. There's also comparison. We tend to compare our partners to ourselves. And quite honestly, the biggest flaw our partner has is not being us and not having the same thoughts or reactions or feelings in a situation that we think we would have, or the actions that we would take if we were given the same situation. So we're comparing them to even a hypothetical of what we would do. And it's not really a fair comparison, and it's not really useful either, you know? And some of this is showing that how badly we really want to be ourselves and a bigger part of our lives. And sometimes it's just a poor way of communicating that we have been modeled. And the competitive thing, if you think you're not competing because you're not like, you know, haha, check one, whatever, how often are we very attached to having the last word or being right? That's very competitive, and it's not cooperative or connecting in the relationship. Again, on the flip side, when you're using empowering language, you're going to get more positive attention because you're not repeating the same story. You're going to be saying new things, talking about new ideas, meeting new people, and having fresh content. So you're actually going to get more positive recognition instead of, you know, the same old humdrum response, you know? You become more self-confident and accurate in evaluation of yourself and others. And that's actually coming from when you're using empowering language, you're not globalizing. You're not all one way or never one way. Things aren't all good or are all bad. You include both of them in there. So there's a higher, you know, broader awareness and actually more accurate sense of yourself and others' abilities and behaviors. You also believe in your ability to change anything that isn't working, because when you're talking about things in a way of, and I'll go over this more, of like, I'm having this, I'm taking this action, I'm doing this, you're telling yourself that you're doing these things, you actually start doing those things, and so different things actually show up in your life. And it seems like an accident or a miracle, but really you changing and using empowering language actually starts having other things show up. And so you actually start to witness the miracle that's possible with empowering language, and your belief in your ability to change things actually grows. You also become the lucky one. If you start talking about your partner in a way that highlights their good qualities, and you start seeing them in a more positive light, well, then you become very lucky in love to have such a wonderful person. If you talk about yourself in ways that lift you up and highlight your positive attributes, you become the lucky one because you get to be you. And your partner then also becomes lucky because you're amazing and they are with you. And so that's how I say this is the fastest way to change the direction of your love life without starting over. You're with the same person. You're with the same person you were yesterday. But if you just start looking at different aspects of them and talking about them in a different way, all of a sudden you become lucky in love for having to be with this person, for getting to be you and having your life experience. And for them, they become lucky for you being in their life. And when you're both feeling lucky in love, or at least glad and having gratitude for them in your life, you start to feel more together. Affection will just flow, and then the teamwork comes a lot easier from there. Also, empowering language, you're going to start prioritizing your future and your present over the past. So you're not going to have to worry so much about what an ex-girlfriend or an ex-wife did. You're not going to have to, count your steps because, your ex-boyfriend said this or that. It's going to be based on who you're really with, who you are now, who they are now, and what it is you'd actually like. Because if you're going to be talking about fresh content, you can't keep going to the past. It doesn't change very much. It is possible to change it. It is. That's quantum physics, but it changes pretty slowly in general, or not at all. When we kind of look at it, it's the same old story. You can give it a couple of new adjectives or maybe add a little character you forgot, but largely it stays the same. So if you're going to have new content and get positive attention because you're not repeating the same old story, that means you're going to have to be putting on creative mode, and that means you're going to have to be shifting your attention to what's happening right now and what's possible and what you'd like for the future. But why a lot of us here are struggling with this is because, again, we've had a lot of poor communication patterns modeled for us. Media, family relations, even education systems aren't modeling great communication. Again, there's the globalizations, always, nevers. There's the projections and assumptions. You're just like so-and-so. You always do this. Gossip is common. It's popular, very popular, but it's very low quality content. It's not things that lift people up. It's stepping on other people's heads. It's a very kind of like cesspool-y stew, that we kind of get caught in. Not uplifting at all. There's an external locus of control, especially if you've had a lot of religious training of praying and having to request from someone outside of yourself if something is even possible. My mom thinks she is being very supportive, but often is not when she says she's going to pray for something. It's kind of like wishing. There's an element of doubt there of, oh, I don't know if it's okay. Let me see if I can get approval. And so that you actually aren't the one who's in charge of the choices you make for your life or how things turn out. And that has been modeled for some of us. A separation of self, that's actually something that is very, very common in language patterning now, is I feel like. And what's followed is by something that's not a feeling. It's generally a thought or an opinion. But what we do is say, I feel like this, so whatever opinion or thought we have becomes a feeling that can now no longer be argued with, because you can't argue with people's feelings. People feel what they feel when they feel it, and we know that. Opinions are up for debate, but feelings aren't. So if you can make an opinion a feeling, now you're no longer up for debate. You can't be rejected, you can't be wrong, and you can't be argued with. But what this actually does is closes us to new information and new ideas that debate can bring. And it actually keeps us farther away from ourselves, as if we need some sort of huge, giant safety bubble because we couldn't handle somebody disagreeing with us. And we, as a culture, are losing the ability to disagree and to have enriching conversations that stem from disagreeing and trying to come to a common ground or a creative solution to a common problem. So some of these language patterns are poorly and super commonly almost ubiquitous in our culture right now, and it's not for our benefit. There's a female response. I've talked about the ones in the how we tend to have harsh startup or justify our requests. There's also a stress response. We know of fight and flight and sometimes the freeze. Some people know about that, some people don't. But there's a tend and befriend. For women, social survival and surviving through social connection is very, very important. To where if you are isolated, you know you will die. So you know you have to work your way into a circle so that you can have a greater chance of survival. Now, how we do this as social beings, humans, is we tend and befriend. And what that usually does is create some sort of enemy that we can work against. The bad guy, which because we're working with other women, sometimes it will be connecting on a problem, especially a common problem, which lots of women have, which is boyfriends or husbands or men not coming through for them. So there is sometimes that a relationship is struggling because we're actually relating and connecting with friends based on having this problem. So the problem has to stay in effect because you could lose your friends if you lose your problem. It's something that's there. Let's see. Talking about a partner in a way that diminishes you and creates opposition. When you talk about how stupid your ex was, when you talk about how stupid your current boyfriend or your husband is, when you talk about how much he doesn't listen to you and how horrible it is and you don't even know why you stay, you actually are telling the other person, your spouse, and yourself that you're not very smart. Because why would you choose somebody like that? If somebody is so bad, why do you stay? Is it because this is the best you can do? This is all you deserve? Because you're worthless and so you need to be reminded of such? We don't think that this is what we're telling ourselves, but this is actually part of the message, or how our subconscious is interpreting the message and making it make sense, because really any brilliant and beautiful person would not be with such a dope. So if we talk about them as if they are such a bane to our existence, we have to be asking, why are we choosing this? What am I getting from choosing this? And being honest about that. And so again, the fastest way to turn around the direction of your love life is just to change how you're talking about your partner and what you're focusing on, as far as what you're looking at and what you're choosing to share content-wise with yourself and your friends. Again, there's a struggle for an unwillingness to do something different. Again, just not wanting to put in the effort to become aware of how often you say you, or want, or wish, or should, or need, not wanting to put the effort in, not willing to rephrase something to make a positive request, to say, I'd like to have this, I'm going to have this, I'll talk about that in a second. So sometimes it's just, we just don't want to. We just would rather it be like this, and wish and hope and pray that it really would change without us having to do something. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. But some of us maybe just aren't quite to the level of being ready to actually do something different. And it's not necessarily about judging that. It's just about being aware. We get it when we get it, and we make a move when we're ready. And nothing on the planet is going to change that. Nothing in the universe. And again, sometimes we're struggling because we just don't know what else to do. When you're feeling low, unlistened to, kind of emotionally drained, it's hard to be creative and to come up with an idea of how to turn things around all by yourself, or have the energy to do it even if you know what it is. So why sometimes coaching can be very effective and helpful is because it helps fill up your emotional cup and give you ideas at the same time, and some tools to make it easier, so that getting over that hurdle becomes so much easier. But if you change your relationship, if you change your language, you can change your relationship. And doing that is increasing your self-confidence, which makes you sexier. Confidence is sexy. When you change your language, you increase positive feelings about your partner, because you're going to be changing how you're talking about them. When you change your language, you invite positive attention and affection from your partner. People that you're kind to and say compliments about and notice their attributes, like their good qualities, they like you, and they will then be more affectionate and vocal about what they like about you. We just are social beings, and we're just kind of trained that way. And we like being liked, so we want to like the person that's liking us so that we can keep that going. That's hardwired in there. When you change your language, there's more security in your relationship, because it's not going to be about you versus me. It's going to be, how are we going to do this together? And it's future oriented. It's hard to get stuck in a rut when you're actually looking on moving forward and continuing to move there. It's easy to be stuck in a rut when you keep looking at the past and for evidence of why things aren't working. That's how, and you keep repeating that, that's how the rut gets deeper and deeper. But if you keep looking out and up and forward, and this is what I'd like to have, this is what I'm going for, this is what we're moving towards, this is how we're doing it, you just don't get stuck. A rolling stone catches no moss, as they say. So the fastest way to change the direction of your love life without starting over is to use empowering language and change what and how you're talking about things. So choosing words that work for you, like I talked about want and need and wishing, all of these you can replace with I'd like to have this. Because then you're stating something that is true. I'd like to have this, not I don't have it. It's I'd like to have this. Or one that takes a little bit extra boldness of I'll have this, I'm taking this, I'm having this. Those are more definitive of like, this is happening. There's a little bit of element of certainty. I actually had to work myself up to those a little bit more. Also, I'm going to. stating, I'm going to take action. I'm going to do this. Not so much, try is a tricky word. So it's not like I'm going to try to do this, but I'm going to change my language. I am changing my language. And speak to it as if you are already doing it, because if you do that, you actually are already doing it. You're already changing your language patterns. Because these things, this way speaks to your ability to get and have things. And if you more emphasize your ability to get and have things, your ability strengthens, and then you're able to talk about it a lot easier. So they, again, kind of go hand in hand. Using iMessages. A lot of times it is very easy, and we are very practiced at picking up what someone else, especially our spouse, should do. You need to do this. You need to do this. Did you know you're doing this? You're doing this again. And it's you. And so the focus is all on them. It's outside of ourselves. There's zero vulnerability there. And it creates a lot of resistance and defensiveness. But if you turn around and say iMessages, I'd like to have this. You know what I'd like for my life? You know what I'd like to have for my family? You know what I'd like to have for my home? I'd like this. You know what? I'm going to do this because I'd like to have this. I'm going to have this cup of coffee, and you start talking about things in a way that allows you to be more in connection with what you're feeling, what you're desiring, and what you're actually doing. And when you use iMessages, and when you're with somebody who wants to contribute to you, it's actually easier to understand what it is that you'd like and how they can contribute. Now, the thing with that is there's some vulnerability and awareness that's required. We have to know what's going on for ourselves and what it is we'd really like. And sometimes this is part of where we just don't know, so that's why we use the you messages. But when we start tapping into what is it I'd really like to happen here, what's the outcome I'd really like to have, and we start speaking to that, there's a lot less resistance and defensiveness, so the other person is more likely to contribute. But then a part to take this further is to let them contribute in their own way instead of demanding that it happen only in this prescribed way that you say. That's kind of a level 2, another class, but just something to kind of throw out there to kind of keep in mind. People really do want to contribute to you, your partner included. It's just sometimes we think that if contribution looks like this, so anything that doesn't look like this, we discount. But if we actually broaden our scope, we'll be like, oh, they did this thing over here, which made this thing easier. It actually did contribute. So kind of opens things up a little bit more. Start talking about your partner in a way that exalts you and in a way that makes you look brilliant and beautiful, because you are. You chose this person. Why did you choose them? Why are you so wise and savvy and clever and amazing that this person gets to be with you and that you get to be with this person? How did you be lucky in love? What is it that you like about them? Because the things that you liked about them when you were dating did not completely evaporate for most people. For some people, things have really deteriorated to a point. But there is an element of the person that you fell in love with is still there. Look for them. Start using their name more often. They'll show up for you more often. Start getting curious about what it is that they are contributing and delivering, because hopefully it's not 100% pain and bad things. You chose them. Why are you wise to choose them? Start talking about them in that way, and that builds you up and starts telling your subconscious, I'm smart. I'm lucky in love. I deserve a great partner. Look, I have a great partner. That's awesome. And your self-confidence will grow by you starting to use more complimentary language about your partner. Also, again, changing the content and talking about things that go well, things that make you feel good. Like I just posted on my Facebook, and a lot of people liked it, was our greatest habit is talking about our problems. We need to break our habit and talk about our joys. It's not always easy. Sometimes it's not even going to be well received. If you have some sort of clique that operates and needs people to kind of be low, some families operate this way. It might not be the easiest, but if you're wanting something different, you got to do something different. Talk about things that are going well. This is how you'll find your true friends. Real friends are there in the good times too. And I think we've all been sold a lot that it's when the chips are down is when you know when people are going to be around, but it's actually the people who can really delight in your success. Even if they're not having some at the moment, that is a real gem. But start talking about what's going well, because something's going well. And your power of language, if you talk about what's going well and you speak that into existence, more stuff goes well. That's just how it works. Create and give energy to the future that you'd like to have instead of the past that you need to heal or would like to avoid. Yes, healing will happen. There will be some past that needs to be talked about in order to do that, but to continually look back and focus on a problem keeps you there. If you look forward to the future, then any kind of injury or wound or something that holds you back from that future will naturally, you'll be called to heal it. But it will happen so much more easily and naturally and quickly when it's actually because we're being inspired to go to our future instead of insisting that that get healed before we can do so. So the keys to success with this is original content. Again, not repeating the same story, not looking to the past for all your information and reference points, talking about things that light you up, talking about something that's new, choosing your words carefully. A lot of this just starts with being aware of how often do I say should. That's a pretty judgmental word. How often do I start my sentences with you? How often do I say like? Feel like? How often am I saying I want something, saying I don't have this thing? And being aware of that and taking a step to rephrase of I'd like to have this. Oh, I'm doing this. I'm going for this. This is what I'm going to do now. This is what I'm having now. And changing your actual word use, your vocabulary. Being vulnerable. So again, a lot of these language patterns that aren't working have actually effectively created a distance between ourselves. And so we need to be vulnerable and look inside at what's actually going on here. What is it that I'm really feeling? I'm feeling like I'm being disrespected, but what am I actually feeling? Is it sad? Is it loneliness? Is it fear, of like I'm not going to survive because I'm getting excluded? Like is it bereavement? Am I actually mourning the loss of something? Am I afraid or am I actually excited about something? Am I ecstatic or enthusiastic? You can really get into the subtleties of things, but what am I really feeling here and what is the outcome I'd really like? Especially when somebody's hurting and you're just angry with them. And I know for a fact that sometimes sorry just does not go deep enough. What is it I'd actually like to do? Because sometimes the bottom line is I want them to go back in the past and change what they did. That's not possible. So if that's what I require, I need to actually be aware of that so that I can actually be like, okay, nobody can actually do that. So what could I ask for? What would he or I be able to be or offer for myself that could ease this pain? So there's some vulnerability and honesty that's actually going to be needed for this empowering language. Future oriented, again, what will create something different? We have practiced these bad habits for a long time. So if we do them again, it's not a big surprise. Don't beat yourself up if you're not perfect about this. But we also know how it'll end. We've practiced this script. It might not end word for word the same, but a lot of times we end feeling sort of crummy, not a lot closer than it was when we started, just as unheard as before because they just didn't listen to us again. And so what will actually create a different outcome? Talk about your life and your partner in a way that makes you feel good. And when I say good, it's what makes you feel light. I like bubbly is a word that comes up for me, like that makes you feel bubbly, that makes you feel sunshiny inside, warm, fuzzy, like delightful, not right or superior or in some way fail safe. That's not the same as truly feeling good. So talk about, because sometimes we feel good knowing that we did the mic drop and they couldn't say anything back. But that's actually just a feeling of superiority and sort of insulation that isn't the same as feeling bubbly or sunshiny. So tune in to the energy that you're feeling in your body when you've got that going on for you, when you're talking about stuff. So empowering language is you can feel good about your relationship and you can be happy with your partner. As simple as just talking differently and changing the content and the message that you've been rehearsing. And you can do that starting now. So some questions. A very common one is, what if I need to vent? And here is where awareness is going to be key. I had a mentor, she was amazing, and she was told, you know, like down the shaman line, but 3 times is okay, 4th is indulgence. And that's a good guide. It really is. You can notice a lot of times somewhere between the 2nd or 3rd time I'm telling somebody this, because sometimes I tell one person and they weren't available or just didn't get what I was saying, or I still had a lot of charge and I need to tell somebody else, that somewhere the energy changes. And you have to be aware of when you're venting, that when you're speaking, you will actually feel the energy sort of discharge and there will be more calm. Sometimes we just need someone to listen to us and for our feelings to be heard. That's venting. That's a dissipation and a discharge of energy. Sometimes we say things and we tell the story and we amp ourselves up and re-trigger ourselves. Now, again, some of this is actually an addictive loop. I talk about it in random places, and if you would like to know, could make it a thing for Power Hour or something. But our own cortisol, we get addicted to our own uppers, and that's one way, is to recharge ourselves. So that if you're telling the story and you're amping yourself up and getting re-mad, you're not venting anymore. It's not healthy anymore. It's actually starting a feedback loop that's just going to keep going and distracting yourself and re-triggering this cortisol loop. So you're actually just going to have to be quiet at that time, which is going to be really shitty because it's so intense. You just want to say it. But if it's not venting, if it's not discharging, it's not actually leading to healing. So that's just kind of a guide. I feel like I'm lying when I'm saying this stuff. Like, things kind of suck right now. How can I just say it's great? And this isn't, there's 2 parts to this. For one, when we fall into a habit of defeating language, when we decide we're going to change and speak and use empowering language, that's a pattern interrupt. Again, we're going to be going into non-habitual behavior. So it's going to be noticeable. It's going to feel weird at first. And a habit will often try to be like, you're lying, because your habit doesn't want to die. You know, they kind of take on their own life form sometimes, it seems like. So what you can do is start small. Like, if your relationship is on the rocks, but you want to change the direction of your love life, so you're going to start with small things. Notice small things about yourself. Include yourself in this too. Notice small things that are positive, that you enjoyed what they did. Start saying something about them. Hey, I liked when you did this, you know? So it doesn't have to be a complete 180 right at the beginning, you know, because that will feel disingenuous and insincere. But it's just starting and practicing. That's the main thing. What's different about this is, with this, as with the other one, is we're targeting the subconscious. We're interrupting patterns. We're deconstructing program. We're brainwashing ourselves about how bad our relationship is and how shitty our partner is, and about how like negative we are and how flawed we are. We're changing all of that. So what's different about this is, even though it seems like some of these things are just semantics, or I didn't really mean it, it wasn't that big a deal, we're actually becoming aware of the gravity and the destructive nature of defeating language, changing it, and that's really getting to the subconscious messaging so that our whole lives can change. Because if we shift from, I can't handle this, this is too much for me, I'm not worthy, this isn't going to work, into, wow, this isn't working, so what can I do? I'd like to change this thing, so I'm going to be taking this action step, and I'd like to have this, so I'm going to do this from now on. Those are 2 completely different ways of operating that will change your whole life just by getting to your subconscious and changing how you're operating. Kind of like changing your operating system on your computer is kind of like what this is. And will it really work? Yes, yes. So I have a client that I worked with, and she was great because she was quick. I mean, she would get stuff, but I mean, in the first, I think 3 sessions, it was very clear. All we did was say, she was very, very good at making sure she won arguments because she was really sharp, you know, very intellectual and brilliant. And also having a strong maternal instinct was a bit domineering in the relationship, as far as it was clear what he needed to do, you know? And so she was clear in telling him that and using a lot of you messages. So we just shifted and said, just be aware. Like at first, you don't even have to do anything different, but just be aware of how many sentences you start with you and how many times you say should. And just be aware of that. And she was blown away and being like, oh my goodness, I can't believe. And so just little by little of when she'd say it, even if it was just in her mind of just being like, okay, what else can I say? So without her having a conversation about what her husband should do, because she'd been saying for years that he needed to get his eyes checked and he needed to go to the dentist and he wasn't taking very good care of himself and he wasn't exercising. And she'd done that for several years to no avail. And then we work together and she starts becoming aware of how often she's saying you and how often she's telling him he should do something that he's not doing, and just taking those and changing that in, I think, 2 months of us working together, she just told me, you will not believe it. He asked me for the number of the eye doctor. I didn't even say a thing. He just said, I think I need to get my eyes checked. And she was in the healthcare field. So he's just like, do you think we could talk about maybe some simple things that I could do for my diet? And it was like, oh my goodness, she'd been talking about this for years. But then all of a sudden she decided to change her own language and take it upon herself to do something, you know, just for her own self. And everything changed. It really was, man, seemingly night and day difference. So yes, it really does work. And now we're on to the final ultimate attention getting, trust building tool that will save your marriage. And that is listening. Silence is golden. The one who yells the loudest is actually the least likely to be heard or listened to. Now, how this is so unfortunate is that pain often screams. It can scream in decibels and actually scream, or it can scream with the amount of silence, and your silence can be deafening. It just depends on the partner and your communication techniques. But who's ever the most dramatic and the harshest is actually the least likely to be listened to. It's what we call the porcupine's dilemma. The porcupine has all his quills out, but he wants a hug so bad. You know, that's how we behave when we're in such pain is, man, we really just want to be loved. We really just want to see that we're okay, that we're going to make it through this, that I'm not flawed as a human being, that you can still see me and love me, that I'm still lovable. But man, I've got so many quills out about what you've been doing wrong and how you've been hurting me and how you haven't been listening and this and that. So I don't get hugs and the pain continues. And that's the struggle that we're in. And so that's why listening can actually turn this around. Listening is healing. What we're usually fighting for, both of us, you and your spouse, are fighting to be heard. You just want to be heard and validated as a person, that your feelings are okay, that the way you arrived at a situation, that what you did in the situation was okay, that you're not a bad person, that you are lovable. That's what we're actually fighting for. We're just fighting for it in different ways. And because we're feeling so depleted inside, we are not communicating effectively. So all this poor modeling that we've got is amplified, exacerbated, and compounded by all the pain that we're in. But if we're heard, when somebody really listens to us and witnesses our pain and is willing to be with us and not change us, in and of itself, that is healing. And sometimes that is all it takes. And the power of this listening as healing, it just can't be overstated. I just want to impress this. I think everyone's had, when somebody just listens to you, a lot of pain just melts away without having to have anything else happen. Nothing else changed. The past didn't change. Circumstances are still the same, but somebody listened to you and you just don't feel so alone. And I gotta say, sometimes, some of the times the person who's listening, it can be ourselves for ourselves. When we insist that it has to be someone else, we cut ourselves off from a wealth of resources that we can be. Like, sometimes we do need somebody else, but sometimes we can sit with the pain, and we can sit with the hurt, and we can say, I'm not going to overreact this time. I can see how you're hurting. I'm witnessing you. I'm here with you. I'm not going to leave you. And saying these to ourselves can actually be more healing than we're giving credit to. Listening is giving space, and it's the only way to create a different outcome. That's a very bold statement. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in just a second. And listening is not just waiting to respond, and it's not listening so that you know how to respond or doing it so someone else can listen to you. That's not real listening. That's not the gift that I'm talking about. And who needs to listen? Who needs to be heard? We insist that it's us who needs to be listened to and then that needs to listen. Sometimes it is ourselves that need to listen to our body. It's ourselves that need to listen to the pain that we're in instead of denying it. Sometimes it might be us that needs to listen to our partner, and that one's really tough to swallow, but sometimes that's what's actually required. When you don't listen, when you're not listening or you're not being listened to, you don't feel heard. And that, just feeling unheard, that alone is such an isolating, depleting, cold, and dark feeling of feeling unheard, like you're not being listened to. It's almost like you're not a person. That's at least the depth that when somebody says, I don't feel heard, that's how it was for me. When you don't listen, you are operating on past information, assumptions and projections that are either outdated or might be inaccurate. You're hurting your partner the same way that your partner is hurting you. If you're feeling unheard, like no one cares about you, no one cares what you have to think, nobody cares about you as a person, if you aren't listening to your partner, you're causing your partner that same amount of pain. Just let that sink in. I think a lot of times when we're hurting, our pain becomes so important and significant, and we insist that it is more painful or more significant pain than anything we could do to our partner, and we kind of lie to ourselves and don't acknowledge the damage that we're contributing by doing a lot of the same things. And when you don't listen, nothing changes. There's no invitation or opening for new information to come to correct these outdated or inaccurate patterns. And you just keep talking over each other so nobody feels heard, so the pain continues, and you throw it back and forth. Things don't change if you don't listen. But if you do, if you listen to yourself, even sometimes when you listen to your partner, you feel heard. It's amazing how sometimes when you give a gift, you get a gift at the same time. It's amazing how that happens. But when you choose to listen, you feel heard. You feel bigger and more able to handle the situation. Now, what that means is when you actually make a choice and say, I'm going to listen to you, I'm going to create a space for you, you actually, in that choice, claim the capacity to be greater and to create a larger space or a larger container for what's going on. Now it's not just about me, and I have to protect me and think all about my thoughts and my feelings and my pain. I'm going to sit and listen, which means I'm actually going to expand more space. So in some ways, you know how sometimes you just open a door and you give things room to breathe and a little bit of air and it vents it out? Sometimes just sitting to choose to listen, you create that kind of space, and the intensity of your feelings might actually decrease slightly. But you also just claim the capacity to be like, I'm going to be a listener. That means I'm going to have to be able to put my feelings, the intensity of my points of views on pause for a second to be able to be with this person and give them the space to speak. There's greatness in that. There really is. That's true leadership right there, I think. Now, when you choose to listen, this is the attention getter. you're going to get his attention because you're interrupting a pattern. Most of us are used to having somebody talk over us, especially, or just walk out and stonewall us. But to actually have someone be like, I'm going to listen to you. I'm not going to overreact. I'm not going to blurt out and interrupt you a million times. I'm actually going to give you a space, and you can actually say something that might be really uncomfortable to hear. I'm going to give you that space. That's a total pattern interrupt. That's a total like, like on the Matrix, that, that happens. And all of a sudden, the entire ball game, the whole playing field has just been up leveled and tilted or whatever, but things really change. Now, when you're choosing to listen, you're also stopping the cycle of hurt. There's so much hurt and anger, resentment, and reaction to not being heard that when you actually say, okay, I'm going to give you a chance to be heard, here's your chance to speak, you take a lot of energy out of that cycle and open the door to a different outcome. Like I said, even if you just decide to listen to yourself and decrease the level of pain that way, you've decreased, let's say, half of the pain that's going into energizing and continuing that cycle. If you pull that much energy out of a pain cycle, that thing really diminishes. And that's super powerful in being able to change the momentum then of the relationship and how the conversation can go. So when you choose to listen, things change. They really, really change. Now, a lot of people are struggling with this is because our culture does not value listening, and few people are doing it. We have a lot of ideas of listening as just waiting your turn to speak, listening so that you know what to say. And really what a lot of us want is a mic drop. There's nothing you can say because I just ended that. Like, that's what actually is getting people's attention, what people think is like awesome. So our culture's not really valuing, hi, take in some possibly painful information so that something different can come in. That's not something we practice. That's not something we see. That's something that teachers stand at the front of the classroom and demand, but that not many people are actually like, hey, let's practice what this looks like, so that when there's a little kid, there's just a control mechanism of, here's how I'm going to punish you and get you to stop doing what you're doing. And being quiet is not necessarily always the same as listening, but instead the teacher could model listening and be like, hey, what do you need so that you could sit still so I can continue with the lesson? It would actually be offering a space to speak. That's not modeled in our education. I don't mean to pick on teachers because I know the burden is so large, the time and the demands are so high. But just to say that our current education system and the classroom dynamic is not really set up to practice listening as a skill. A lot of us are struggling because pain is loud and it's impatient. It is not really going to sit down and wait to have somebody else go. It's a bit of a bully that way. And when I'm saying pain, I'm talking about disappointment, frustration, anger, fear, resentment, all of these kind of things. I'm grouping them all and just calling them pain because they don't feel good inside. There's a struggle with listening because there's a fear of awkward silence. Silence goes against our social training. It makes us edgy, and a lot of us then fill it up with words or funny activities or gestures. We do not have a lot of training or practice or any kind of socialization that would get us a little bit more familiar and comfortable with the ability to sit still and be quiet in the presence of another person. Part of it's a social animal thing, and then part of it is a very social cultural training that silence just isn't highly prized. It's considered awkward here. We'll struggle if we take ourselves too seriously. If we believe everything that we think and we feel, and when I say this, believing that everything we think and feel is important or that it's ours. Now, that is actually a different class for a different time, but let me say for all you empaths out there, that is part of the user manual that we did not get. Everybody talks about being empathic as a gift, being able to be aware of other people's feelings, but it doesn't feel like it because nobody told us how to use it. But one of the things to be aware of is some of the feelings that we're feeling, and sometimes why they are so intense is because they aren't ours. They're somebody else's intense feelings, but we're sensing them and perceiving them with our bodies, so they assume that they're ours. And so there are some times where we're fighting battles and struggling with feelings that just aren't ours to be dealt with. They're either just information about how another person is functioning from, might be information that maybe even your spouse that sometimes like this is the level intensity of their pain. So sometimes just checking in and saying, is this even my feeling? Yes, you're feeling it in your body. Yes, you're very acutely aware of it, but that doesn't necessarily always mean it's yours. That's just a little, again, upper level, but just throwing that out there in case that helps. We will struggle with listening if we're attached to being right. If we absolutely have to be right, then we have to say, we have to have the last word, and we will definitely have a tendency to interrupt because we'll have to correct everything that isn't quite matching what we think. And that makes a big hindrance to listening. Again, an unwillingness to do something different, being more comfortable with the certainty of how things are going to end and knowing how this is going to go rather than being willing to work with and practice sitting with awkward silence and not knowing what to do. And sometimes some of us are just like, man, I'm tapped out. I can't do it. And some people are just plain unwilling. And so that's just being aware of what it is that you more highly value. But listening can and will change your relationship. It will decrease the hurt, the pain, the disappointment, fear, frustration, anger. It's going to decrease that so that we're not going to be as reactive. When we're reactive, we immediately throw it back out. So it's almost like we're playing catch with a medicine ball of pain and saying, I don't want it, you take it. I don't want it, you take it. And we throw that back and forth, and we're kind of caught in this endless loop, you know? But if somebody actually just drops the ball and says, okay, I'm going to listen to you, the whole dynamic changes. You change how you see yourself and your partner, and vice versa. They will change how they see you if you choose to listen. Because when you choose to listen and you say, I'm going to listen to you, again, just like using their name, you're saying, you're a person, you've got some stuff going on, I can tell you're hurting, I'm going to give you some space and I'll be here for you. Again, there's greatness in that. There's vulnerability and love with that. It's a real gift. And whenever you can see somebody as a person and not just as you're the source of my pain that I have to protect against, again, the dynamic is changing. And if you do this, your partner will also see, wow, they are showing up in a way that I didn't know they could. They never have before. Wow, this is surprising. They have a capacity that I didn't know they really had. And how you see yourself too, because, okay, I'm going to be a leader. I'm going to take the first step and I'm going to offer you the space and listen to you instead of continuing to demand and fight and argue about how much you need to listen to me. That's a 180 twist right there in about 2 seconds. When you listen, you can receive new information that can correct inaccurate assumptions, which could be a game changer. Again, we talked today in the Power Hour about how we often say, I saw this, I felt this, so this caused my feeling. But really, it's something here had a similar resonance, pinged the trigger, it went off and I felt like this, but one didn't cause the other. The trigger was already in place. So we can actually correct inaccurate assumptions. A lot of times there's like, you did this, you said this, I said this, and then you behaved this way. But what we saw them responding to whatever we said might have actually been a response to something we had no idea that was happening. As far as when I said this, you hung up on me. Oh my goodness, I didn't hang up on you. I totally slipped and fell and my button and my finger hit the end button, you know? I don't know what happened, but I just walked under a power line and the phone got cut off. I did not hang up on you. But if we're really mad at them, we just don't listen to this. But if we actually choose to listen, we can be like, oh, that's what happened. Okay, and there's actually sometimes we have to be willing to let the problem die because it was as simple as a simple miscommunication that we blew up. Once the miscommunication has been corrected, there's actually no more need to process. Then we just have to let it go. But listening makes that information available and a different outcome possible. Listening is a soft invitation through initiation that offers a new model for how to be together. So there's a lot of like fancy words, I think, But it's basically when you give a gift with no strings attached, you're saying, hey, I'd like to do something different. I'm just going to throw this out there. When you give a gift with no strings attached, that is a huge trust builder. Now, if there is a deep, deep level of pain, let me tell you, you might have to offer this gift several times before they can trust you as something they can take. It's just like dogs that have been wounded. They don't even want to take a treat from you because they're so scared. So you have to offer the treat and offer the treat and offer the treat and offer the treat. Say, I'm not gonna give you this treat and then hit you. I'm not gonna offer you this treat and then take it away in front of your face before you can have it and tease you that way. I'm actually just gonna offer the treat because I want us to be connected. I want you to trust me. I want to have a loving relationship with you. That's what we're doing with our partners, is saying, I'm gonna give this to you. I'm gonna give this to you. You're gonna snap at my hand? Okay, I'm gonna give it to you again. Because the reason they're snappy at the hand is just because the level of pain that they're in is also high. That's the reason we're all snappy. We're all just in a lot of pain. And instead of seeing each other as the source of pain, if we can just see them as a person with pain, we can be more willing to listen, and that can start de-escalating, and the situation can be easing a lot faster than it has been. Again, listening will open the door for a different outcome and build the trust. And again, like I said, you're going to have to be willing to do this more than once. Hardly ever is it a one time is going to change. Maybe however long your relationship is, decades of a pattern like this. Or a lot of times these are reminiscent of childhood patterns, and it's just that wound is open and that trigger's still happening. But it's a real deep, they've been dealing with it or operating this way for a long time. So it's going to take a little bit of time to extinguish itself. But be willing to listen and give a gift without strings attached, and, be amazed at the closeness, the vulnerability, and the intimacy, just like with that little rescue dog, where you just kept trying, and now without any coaxing or anything, he will just come up and lick your nose, and it's the best feeling in the world. Like you can have that kind of affection and closeness with your partner again. The ultimate attention getting and trust building tool that will save your marriage is listening. So here are the how-tos of listening. And let's so much not quite keys to success, but the hows, I guess we'll say this, is to be quiet is number one. Like, it isn't just being quiet and taking your turn, but it's being quiet because you can't really listening if you're talking at the same time. Be open. Don't assume that you know what they're going to say. Yes, they might actually say the same thing, but don't assume that you already know what they're going to say, so you might as well not even listen. That's a backdoor. That's not helping. Be open to new information. Reflect. Mirror their body image and repeat what they said. What this will do is actually get you to pay attention to them, so get you a little bit out of your head and into their world and seeing how they're posturing. And when you can be in a similar posture, you kind of level the playing field and make it a little bit safer. And by mirroring the posture is, if they're really, really closed, you don't want to mirror that. But you can see if they're sitting, you'll want to be sitting too. Having a sitting standing creates a really tough power dynamic. Face them so that you can see them. If you have your backs turned or you're totally not looking at each other, that isn't really an open space. So paying attention to the body language, repeating what they said, not so much to be a parrot, but to actually paraphrase or say what they said, because that is part of knowing that what they said got through. And again, it requires you to pay attention to what they're saying instead of clinging on to a word or a phrase and then creating a response around that. Relax. Release your grip on being right. Don't take everything so seriously. That will help. But it's hard to listen if you look like you're going to pounce on them. That's not really, again, we're talking about reflecting. If you're ready to pounce, that's not a very relaxed posture. You're actually going to have to get your body into a way that it can receive. So relaxing into a receptive position. And again, there might be a mild bit of bracing, especially at starts, because there might be some harsh criticism that's coming your way when you're actually like, hey, I'm going to give you an open floor, and we've got a really charged thing going on here. So it's not like you have to totally open yourself up to a total firing range, but make it to where you could get in a position to receive something and handle something and be with them and open the channels of conversation. Then be quiet some more. It is okay if you don't have an immediate response. This is actually a good thing because it means you were listening. You weren't just planning your response and having an immediate mic dropping, jaw dropping kind of comeback. Learn to be okay with that. That's fine. And then don't rush them. It's also okay if they don't have an immediate response either. Give them space. You listening to them in a lot of ways might be the first time they've been listened to in a long time, especially if maybe their parents were the ones that didn't even listen to them, you know? And they might have seen you too, just like you see them often, as a source of pain and the person that is hurting them. So they might come back with some kind of snarly quips or some sarcasm or biting remarks, or they might not actually know. You know, if you have a question, you're really listening, like, hey, what's really going on for you? And maybe they don't come back immediately. Maybe it's because they're actually going inside and taking your invitation and believing you that you're actually going to listen to them. And so they're actually like, what is actually going on for me? You know, I know I'm mad, but I think there's something else there. So give them a chance to process their internal experience as well. And be honest. Say if you're not able to really listen and be present at the time. Because if this is happening for the first time and this is part of a charge conflict, you're hurting too. So you might need a little bit of time and space to tend to yourself in order to be there and willing to listen. And when I say honest, you might start and then feel yourself getting triggered and amped. Be honest and say, hey, I'm getting charged and I can tell I'm just wanting to like blow up. So maybe I'm just going to take a step back. I thought I could do this and I'd really like to listen and be there for you, but I can tell I'm not doing a good job right now. Let me step away for a little bit. Like, be honest with what you need, because you can't force and you can't fake listening. That's one thing. And it's better to give yourself some time, and also you're practicing listening to yourself of like, whoa, this is like the meter's going off, things are getting really intense, I'm feeling really rattled and maybe a little bit, you know, unsafe, definitely triggered. Like, I want to bring that down for myself as well. That's part of listening to yourself and part of the listening process and practicing. So the keys to success, which are actually complete requirements, is don't talk or interrupt while other person's talking. That's just a level of respect and part of the listening dynamic. Don't assume you know what they're going to say, and include you. Just like I ended with that last one, listen to yourself. If things are getting a little bit too charged, a little bit too intense inside, make sure you're listening to your experience as well. Also listen to your desires, what outcomes it is that you have, what feelings are going on for you, and make listening to you more of a habit. Listen to the whole message. A lot of times we, especially when we're in fights and we are attached to being right, we will take things literally that we know what meant literally. We will take things out of context and we will repeat things back, but in a completely different tone to give it a different spin, just so we can be right. Listen to the whole message, the words, the tone, the body language, and even what's not being said. Listen to the whole thing. This is part of your offering space. You make more space. Be able to expand your awareness and take in more information. It's not all going to be bad. It's actually just probably a lot of it's going to be new because you weren't even willing to listen before. Or you've heard the same thing in a million times, but now you're hearing it in a totally different way. It's just hitting a totally different part of your brain or your heart, you know, but listen to the entire message. Be willing to be uncomfortable. Again, silence is going against our social training. It's awkward, but if you're willing to be uncomfortable, that's huge. You're going to have to be. Be willing to give with no expectation of reciprocation. Be willing to listen even if they do not listen to you. That's a true if you're going to lead, you're going to have to be willing to do this. If you're a parent, you already know this is how it goes. You have to give and give and give for years and decades sometimes before that kid really gives back in a way that you like, and the same with your partner, be willing to give with no expectation of return, no strings attached. That's a true gift, and that's where the trust is going to come from. Be willing to be wrong. Again, you've been repeating the same old story. You've been excluding information. You've been wanting to be right. Be willing to be wrong. Be willing to be, or at least corrected. Maybe you weren't all wrong, but it wasn't quite exactly what you thought it was. It's not a big deal. Okay. Wow, maybe it was simpler to get over this than we thought, because it was actually such a simple thing. But if you're totally unwilling to be wrong and not willing to take in information to correct any kind of outdated assumption, things aren't going to change. So be willing to be wrong, or to have some ideas challenged or corrected, and be willing to have to do it more than once. Anything that's worth doing is worth doing again. And the amount of love and intimacy and affection and closeness and healing that can actually come from listening is so worth the practice and the repeated attempts. It really is. So be willing to do it more than once. Do something different, get something different, and enjoy the change. Just see how, even quickly sometimes it happens that a fight will end when you actually choose to listen. So again, the question that's come up is, why should I listen if I'm the one who's not being listened to? And again, there is no rule on this. But if you're not feeling listened to, and you are demanding and screaming and fighting and arguing that you need to be listened to, and if you're seeing a lot of defense and resistance on the other side, then the chances are pretty high that your partner is also feeling that way. So you know the pain and how agonizing it is, devastating even, when somebody just refuses to listen to you, because it's just so simple. So what if you could just deliver something so simple to them and decrease the hurt? Part of it's just a pragmatic thing. You've been demanding and fighting and rallying around needing to be heard. So what if you just listened and just turned the whole thing on its head and just went about it 100% a different way, just to see if something different would show up? I'd say we've practiced so much with the other one, this one's just worth a roll of the dice. And again, it's not that you have to, it's not that you should, although things will change if you do, but it's that you can. And if you do, things will change. So that's the easy one of that. If I started off well, but then I got mad, or he interrupted, or I started interrupting and I noticed it, again, just be honest, be vulnerable. Hey, I started off well and I can see I'm not doing well right now. Just give me a couple minutes. I want to be here for you, but I'm not doing it well. Okay. I can see I'm still charged here. Just be honest. Call out what's actually happening. Be willing to not be perfect at this. You didn't get this modeled well for you. This is going to be new for everybody. It's okay if you're not good at it at first. What do I do if he does say the same thing he always does? Well, that's just great. He does. How are you going to respond? It doesn't have to be the same way. Even if he says the exact same thing, if you're willing to hear the whole message, or if you're just willing to listen and not react, that's hugely different. Even if he says the same thing does not mean you have to react the same way. Because if you do, you'll know exactly how it ends, and you won't get any closer, and things aren't going to get any better. But if you choose not to react, you've opened the possibility for a different outcome. And will this really work? Yes. And I'm going to tell you, my husband and I had a rough go of it for quite some time, and now, as you might experience, sometimes the fights that we had, I don't even know what they were about. I don't know what started them. They were so dumb. But at the time, they were so important. And, you just about stake your life on it, because, damn it, I'm going to be listened to, and that's it. I need to be listened to. You just need to listen to me. And then the whole thing would go away. But that's exactly what he's fighting for, too. We're just actually not even saying it that efficiently or eloquently. So we're fighting about something dumb, but that's what we're really, kind of fighting for. And we had been going about it, arguing back and forth, taking a break, kind of deteriorating into, I don't know, just saying snarky things that weren't really helping, the sarcastic little jabs that you take that are not helpful. Okay, we got to that point too. And so finally, it's like we're in bed and we'll be quiet, and then one of us will start, usually me, and again, and he, I think at some point I was just like, this is old. I want to go to sleep. I don't sleep well when I'm mad. It just doesn't happen. But I was just like, man, this is so dumb. I don't even remember at this point what we're really fighting about. So I said, what is actually going on? And he responded with something that was so snarky. Like, I don't remember the words, but I just know it was it wasn't a low blow, but it was obviously a total deflection and just like totally sarcastic and snappy. And I was like, okay, again, that did not go over the way that I was hoping. So I was just like, with a response like that, it sounds like you must be hurting. And that was actually just from me. I think I had reread a blog that I wrote that day. And so I was kind of embarrassed with how poorly I was performing. I was like, I've got to be able to do something here. And so instead of reacting, again, that I had been for hours, I just said, okay, that's a hurting response. I guess you're hurting. And he immediately broke down and he actually cried. He doesn't cry that often, but that was the level of pain that was going on. And me refusing to listen and continue to fight him was amplifying his pain. And he just melted. His whole body melted. And we were able to hug and then actually talk about whatever it was that we were charged about. And we went to bed holding hands, And it was all just because I was just like, I've got to be able to do something different. I've been arguing now for probably 2 hours and we haven't gotten anywhere, and I do this for a living. Like, I've got to be able to do better than this. Like, so maybe it's just to tell my feelings to put on hold and I'll listen to him. And I offered it. It was brutally rebuffed, but I didn't react to that even. It was just like, wow, that's a pain response. That's what's happening? And it was just a total discharge. And it changed. Everything changed. So it really, really does work. Listening is super powerful. Do you guys have any questions? Is there anything that is burning for you that you would like to answer before we wrap this up? And I think I got all of them that had come through earlier. So here's what I would like you to remember from today. If you had nothing else from the last hour and 45 minutes, this is what you've got to take home, is there's nothing wrong with you. Relationship problems are not any evidence that there is something wrong with you or with your partner. There's things that aren't working. There's things that we've seen and practiced that aren't effective, but there is nothing wrong with you. There's no reason you can't actually have happiness. You're worthy of good things happening to you. There's nothing wrong with you. You have the power to change things. It's available in your language. It's available in how you request things. The power to have something different show up is within your grasp. So you are actually a big, huge resource in your aim for happiness. And all of this is not anything that you should or have to do. It's that you can do them now that have an idea of an action step you can take. You can, and things really change if you do. Your language is super powerful, so please start using it for you. It's part of the power that you have to change things, is how you're speaking to yourself and about your partner. It's okay if you don't know what to say or what to do next. That's a good thing. It's showing you that you're not on autopilot, that you're stepping out of the automatic programming that you've been functioning from so long. It's a pattern interrupt. It's actually a good thing. So even though it feels uncomfortable, it's okay. And confidence comes from doing. We can keep things in the imaginary realm and toss them around and around in the theory loop and keep it, going around in the marbles up here. But when we actually make an attempt, even if we fail, there is something inside us that shows us how powerful we are because we actually took a step. And confidence is sexy. when you actually start doing things different. Even though you feel like you look awkward and stupid, your confidence is actually growing because you're actually telling yourself, I can do something and I am doing something. And you become confident, and that is sexy. That is attractive, positively attracted, not just like, wow, you're such an obnoxious person that I'm getting attention from being so negative. It's actually the positive attention that we've been seeking. So confidence comes from doing, so try these things. Practice them. Be awkward, fail, flop around, but take a step, take a risk. That's fucking badass and sexy. Create a win-win. Use the formula, simply ask for what you'd like, sweeten the tart. Be aware of your language, choose words and contents that lift you up. And listen, this is how things are going to change. They're going to change faster. You're going to feel heard. You're going to feel more confident about yourself. And your partner is going to feel better about themselves and being with you. That's a win-win. And that it's up to you is not a bad thing, actually. It's a get out of jail free card, because then you get to move at your speed on your timeline, which is, I'm going to start right now. Instead of having to wait for your partner to make a move in order for things to get started. You can get started right away. It's actually awesome that it's up to you. And what I do is I help you create that happy relationship to help you know what action step to take without you having to figure everything out on your own, or even getting them on board and coming with you. So it's simple. How I help create a happy relationship to save this marriage is you get a free initial consultation. So we're going to talk about what's going on for you and make sure we're a good match before moving forward. There's no sales. There's no pressure. There's no bullshit. We're just going to talk about how we can work together and if that's a good fit. Then, if you choose to move forward, if we're like, okay, yeah, it's a good fit, what I've got is matching your situation, we'll move on and schedule your intake appointment. And at that time, it's actually your first coaching session, but we're going to get more in depth about the obstacles, but also start getting some real good information about what are the goals. What is it that has been lacking that you would like to have in your life? What is going to inspire you to keep going forward when things are tough? What is the future you'd like to have together? It can't just be better or more. Let's get a little bit more clarity on that. And then from there, we'll create an action plan so that you can be making progress in realizing those goals in the shortest amount of time possible. From there, you're going to the active coaching, and that's the follow-ups, the weekly and bi-weekly sessions, to make sure that we're continuing to give you practice time, to introduce new tools and techniques to help you dump some of the baggage, learn new skills, and practice and be heard, all of these things, and also give us a chance to tweak and refine any kind of part of the action plan so that you can continue making progress. And then we're going to celebrate, because in a 90-day relationship remodel, within the first 3 weeks, you're going to notice things are going to change. But by the end of 90 days, you are going to feel so different as far as what your relationship looks like and what you know is possible, and that you can actually do that. It's going to be so amazing. Then we're going to celebrate your success, and we're going to call some attention to the increased affection and loving intimacy that's going on for you guys. And I'm going to invite you and encourage you to share that with your friends and your family. I mean, because I'm a small business owner and I love to help more people. I want to be a resource for this kind of change on the earth, but to also share with your friends and family as far as this is now a new legacy, a new model for relationship that you can show your siblings and your children. This is saying, hey, that one didn't work. We got that. It wasn't a great fit. Neither one of us felt really happy in there. So this is the one that we made. This is how we both feel listened to. We both get to create a future that we'd like to have. We've named what that future is, and we're actually taking steps to get there. And we're talking about all the fun that's going to happen when when we hit that goal, when we reach that target. And share that. Have that be part of the content that you're sharing with your friends and your family and your children so that they can see, wow, real happiness is actually an option for me. This is awesome. And I'm so stoked to be part of that process and would love to work with you to do that. So get started. Just let me know if you're interested and we can book that initial consultation after this call. At the free consultation, we'll discuss the specifics of your situation, make sure we're a good fit, and then we'll schedule that intake appointment and get that 90-day relationship remodel started for you. And if you book, because you've made it from the start all the way to the end of this presentation, that if you book your consultation tonight, I will waive the setup fee. Again, we'll go over all of the pricing and process at the free consultation. So you will have all of the information you need to make the choice that's going to work best for you financially, emotionally, relationally. Okay, you're going to have all that. But I'm going to let you know that if you do choose to take your first action step tonight, that I'll waive that setup fee for you just to be like, hey, rock on, I'm celebrating your badassery. I will be doing this seminar again for the last time next week. So if this was a benefit for you, you can have enjoy a repeat performance, or please share it. The link will be the same. Share that with your friends and family so that they can get some ideas on how to improve their communication, face insecurity, build their confidence, and save their marriage, to start healing, to stop hurting, start healing, and start laughing together again. So keep your eyes peeled for emails about that. And thank you so much for joining me tonight. It has been such a pleasure to work with you. That's my little pupperoo, the little guy that was on my lap at the very beginning. It's my Stimp dog. And we are so happy that you have chosen to share your evening with us and to get some tools and techniques to help you save your marriage. It's possible. I have lived it. I'm seeing clients in the process of doing it as we speak, and it's amazing. It is such a different life, and I'd love to be part of you having a joy-filled heart. So let me do that. Schedule your free consultation. And thank you again for joining me tonight. And hopefully I see you in an initial consultation at another free talk, or maybe in the Facebook group for Power Hour. Until then, all of the best.